And we're back in the car like we never left. Welcome to the Confessions of a Not So Dangerous Mind podcast. I'd like to thank you all for spending some of your hopefully happy hump day evening here with me in New York. But once again, we're going to skip past all that promotional jazz and get right to the guts of the episode. This will be another dual D-U-A-L, not D-U-E-L, entry. This will be in the most underrated film performances series, although its lead actor was in fact nominated for an Oscar. But when people name their favorite or best performances by this actor, this film does not ever get mentioned. Certainly not in the top 5. I would think that I would put it in the top 5, but this will also be the newest entry in our continuing series of the best movie you've never seen. Now, a filmmaker who has only, in my opinion, who has only missed once. This film is from the magnificent, brilliant writer-director Alexander Payne, who his next film after this was Sideways with just a sensational Paul Giamatti performance. Where was his Oscar nomination? You got Thomas Hayden Church, got a supporting actor nom for that. And Virginia Madsen probably should have won supporting actress. She didn't. Paul is the lead. And where was his Oscar nomination? Oh, and by the way, where was his Oscar nomination in 2003 for American Splendor? I don't know these things. Where was his Oscar nomination for supporting for Cinderella Man in 2005? I do not know these things. But what I do know is that the only movie that Alexander Payne, in my opinion, missed was Downsizing with Matt Damon. Brilliant concept. The movie is just not that good. It's not that good, in my opinion. You know what they say about opinions. But in 2002, a year that I just talked about yesterday with regards to Adrien Brody winning Best Actor in a really a stunning upset, given the big hitters he was up against, Jack Nicholson, Nicolas Cage, Sir Michael Caine, and a guy that most people thought was going to win, possibly the greatest living actor, Daniel Day-Lewis. And Adrien Brody, I think, deservedly won the Best Actor Oscar for The Pianist, but Jack Nicholson was not nominated. It was not a courtesy nomination. It was not a Lifetime Achievement Award kind of a nomination. It was well-deserved. And that's the movie I'm going to talk about. Alexander Payne's 2002 adaptation of Louis Begley's bestseller, well-regarded, super highly praised by critics, but a difficult novel and a very difficult film, marketed as a comedy. It's not really a comedy. And people, I know a couple of guys at Bev's Gym all the way back then, went to the movie thinking it was going to be a laugh riot, colorful Jack Nicholson performance a la Witches of Eastwick or Batman or any number of movies where Jack is so colorful if you want to go Prizzi's Honor in the 80s. But it is not that movie. And one way to kind of explain what it takes and what is it to be a great film actor or film actress. There are different ways to judge these things, and it's all subjective. But one way to do it is to take two disparate roles in films which came out when the actor or actress is roughly the same age. Compare and contrast the performances. That's as good a way to see how talented was this person. Did they make me believe they were character A? Did they make me believe they were character B? And how wide of a gulf is character A from character B? For example, watch the movie The Remains of the Day, featuring arguably Anthony Hopkins' single greatest film performance, even though he didn't win the hardware for that. Watch The Remains of the Day and then watch Silence of the Lambs. You can see that it's the same actor. He's about a year and a half, maybe 2 years older in Remains of the Day. But you would think that Anthony Hopkins had a double because this can't be the same guy. I hurt so badly for him in Remains of the Day, and I fear for everyone in his circle in Silence of the Lambs. That is masterclass level stuff. Well, Jack Nicholson, if I'm asked, how do you explain Jack? What two movies in roughly the same time frame would you throw at people? It's very simple. You could even do 3, but we'll stick to 2. The third would be anger management. But you compare Jack Nicholson in 2003's Something's Gotta Give. Not a great movie. It was a hit. It's funny. There's a lot of laughs. Keanu is funny. Everyone, Diane Keaton, Frances McDormand, Amanda Peet, the whole cast. Everyone's great. The movie is super entertaining. It's not that good. But you look at Jack in that movie, and then you watch him just a year earlier, and it may have only been shot 6 months earlier in About Schmidt. That's how you see just how skillful, just how versatile, and just how resourceful of an actor, even later era, mid-60s Jack Nicholson still was. He was still grinding. He was still giving every performance what he had. Man never phoned anything in. And in Something's Gotta Give, he plays the best representation of what we think Jack Nicholson was probably like at that age. He was not dating age-appropriate women. And the joke, of course, was that Diane Keaton is a lot younger than him, and she was not even close to being young enough for him to take seriously as a romantic partner. He saw her as a school marm, and he's a kid in college, and I'm not going to go for the school marm. Or as he puts it, I'm something of an expert on the younger woman. And I should be, because I've been dating them for 40 years. And we laugh, it's funny, but he is not kidding. This is a guy at age 25 was dating women in their 20s, and at 65 he is dating what? Women in their 20s. And there's a lot of jokes. God bless Jack Nicholson. That's terrific. But Nicholson sells it. This is a super successful music industry executive, highly intelligent. He's a womanizer. He's not that great of a guy. He's not a crook. He's not that. But he is confident. He is a swashbuckling kind of personality. Rewind the clock to 2002's About Schmidt, and Jack Nicholson plays Warren Schmidt, the title character. The title of the film About Schmidt is not an accidental title. It's not a vague title where you say, why is this the name of the movie? Why is the name of Collective Soul's song September? Why is it September? I've never been able to figure that out. It doesn't really seem to make sense for the song. It's called September. They say the word September several times at the end of the song, but you'd think it would be part of the hook. It's not. About Schmidt really is about this guy named Warren Schmidt. And Jack is playing his real age, and he is not playing the swashbuckling swordsman, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, that he plays in Something's Gotta Give. He is a guy who is about to hit retirement age. He's got a dull life and a wife that he doesn't really even know that well, because she's just the person he wakes up next to every morning. And he's 65. He has some money. He's not unsuccessful, but he has kind of outlived his professional usefulness. It's time to retire. And now what? Because he's in good health. There isn't anything to suggest that he doesn't have at least another 15 years. That he and his wife, they have a Winnebago, maybe travel the country. They have, as I say, savings and pension and with Social Security. They don't really have to worry about money. This is not that kind of film where, for example, the movie Jerry and Marge Go Large, which deals with a similar kind of situation where Bryan Cranston and Annette Bening, they're married. He's kind of forced into retirement. He doesn't know what to do with himself. They have money, but not like this. They're on a very tight fixed income, so he's a math genius who figures out how to beat the lottery and start making oodles of money. But Warren Schmidt comes to this crisis point. He's retiring. His whole life has been his job. He has a daughter played by Hope Davis she's one of those actresses. I really like her. And speaking of Paul Giamatti, American Splendor, I can't stand her character in this movie. She's not evil, but she just, she really gets on your nerves is what I'll say. She's a great actress, but the character is so grating. And her husband, played by Dermot Mulroney, he's a scream in this movie. He is fucking riot. And Warren Schmidt just doesn't know what he wants to do. Does he want to be closer to his daughter and the son-in-law? Or does he just want to be left alone? Does he want to travel the country with his wife? Or is he even tired of being married to this woman that she tells him to pee sitting down? I mean, give me a break. Shouldn't Jack Nicholson, let me tell you something. I thought that I was going to go my whole life and not see Jack, Laker girls hanging over him, sunglasses at the Oscars, hooked up with I don't even know how many women, used to go to the Playboy Mansion. They were throwing themselves at old Jack. I thought that I was going to be able to go my whole life and not see Jack Nicholson peace sitting down. Thanks to this movie, if I bet that, I lost the bet. But it's showing that this is just basically a mid-60s schmuck who's already not only past his prime, does he really have anything to live for? And it's jarring to see Jack play this kind of character in this era. Because a recent movie before that, he did the film The Pledge with his old buddy, Sean Penn. And it's a very difficult film. It's a depressing movie, not surprisingly, from Sean Penn. Very well directed. I mean, very few people doubt that Penn is not a phenomenal actor and a very talented filmmaker. But that's a film where he plays a vibrant force. He's not a doddering old man. That movie was shot a year before About Schmidt. Again, showing that Jack was trying different things, sometimes playing a little younger, sometimes playing a little older, but never giving less than, trying to hit a home run. So in the world of About Schmidt, Warren Schmidt decides to do something with his time very early in the film. And us Gen Xers and some young boomers remember we couldn't watch regular TV back in the day without seeing nonstop commercials to telling, not us because we were kids, but trying to get our parents to sponsor a child in a third world country. Now, you're 8 years old. Just get back to Woody Woodpecker. I'm not interested. Sally Struthers from All in the Family. She used to do these kind of ads. You get a little bit older and you understand. Every little bit does help. And I remember thinking, what do they mean? As little as 50 cents a day can feed a child? What the hell are they doing? What does that mean? Warren Schmidt decides that he wants to sponsor a child. He wants to do something constructive while he's figuring out what's the rest of his life going to be like. And he ends up sponsoring a child who I think is from Ethiopia named Indugo. And as no less an authority than Mike Francesa of Mike and the Mad Dog, who I was still listening to because the Yankees were kind of still in their glory period with Joe Torre and Mike and the Mad Dog screaming at each other about the Mets and the Yanks and the Giants and all of this shit. But Mike Francesa, similar to what I said about Jack Nicholson sitting down to pee. Oh, he's the kind of man who sits down to pee. Yeah, there you go, because his wife told him to. Terrific. There's all kinds of gender politics at play if you want to look at this movie that way. But Mike Francesa, huge movie fan, same with the Mad Dog. He said, my biggest takeaway from this film is the way that Jack Nicholson says, "Dear Indugo." He says it with such sincerity that you would think that this 65-year-old guy, he's not a techie. You'd think he would be out of touch, and he would not. He might sponsor a child, but when they tell him, write a letter to the young man that you're sponsoring, that your money is going to help to keep him in school, all of this stuff, which it's all good stuff. This is not a knock on Warren Schmidt, but he takes it seriously. There is no smirking, snarky Jack Nicholson. There's no screaming and yelling about God and the devil, which would be him, in The Witches of Eastwick. He's earnestly writing letters to this kid, and he's trying to be supportive and helpful, even though he's probably never going to meet him. But it isn't just that. He doesn't have anybody to talk to. He doesn't really have any friends. He doesn't know his wife that well. It's a total ridicularity, but he doesn't know her that well. And then, spoiler alert, early in the film, the wife passes. And now he really doesn't have anybody to talk to because he has this strange relationship with the daughter, and he doesn't really think very much of the son-in-law. Randall is his name. And Jack Nicholson goes the entire movie, and I will say in 2 hours, he only has one line reading. One! In the whole film, and I've seen this film 3 times, where he even remotely resembles Jack, the character of the son-in-law. And I'd say Dermot Mulroney was thought to be a bit of a stiff, that he should have had a bigger career, but I think he's a home run hitter in this movie, and I really like his performance. A lot of people took shots at him because the way that Rupert Everett walks away with My Best Friend's Wedding. But I didn't think that Dermot was bad. I thought he was fine. And I really like what he does in Copycat with, I almost said Holly Hunter. Nah, great mistake. With Holly Hunter and Sigourney Weaver and Harry Connick Jr., William McNamara, among others. I really like his performance in that film. But here, he's playing against the fact that he's an exceedingly attractive guy. He's a really good-looking dude. But they make him seem like a putz, which his character kind of is. He's trying to get Warren to invest in what we know, and we're laughing. It's a pyramid scheme. This might as well be Bernie Madoff, not as obviously horrific. But he tries to get him into this pyramid scheme relatively early in the film, and Warren just kind of manages to get away. Yeah, he puts him off. And then he has this one moment, probably about 2/3 of the way through the film, where he gets a little smile and he goes, "Hey, Randall, how's that investment situation working out for you?" And it's the only moment where it feels like the real Jack, or how we perceive him, is coming out to play. And just as quickly, he retreats. I don't know if Alexander Payne said, yeah, give us your best Jack for that one line. I don't know. But it's a welcome reminder of how different this character is from almost anything that Jack Nicholson did. Now, if you want to point to a film from the 80s, such as Ironweed, where he plays a kind of degenerate alcoholic coming to the end of the... I don't know that I would necessarily put that in the same category. But it's... Warren Schmidt needs something in his life. He's too old to start over, but he's not too old to enjoy what time he has left. He has the means to do something other than sulk and write letters to this child, which I'm sure the kid thinks is terrific. At least this guy gives a shit. But he doesn't have anybody to talk to, as I said. And he actually explains to the kid that his wife makes him pee sitting down. I mean, that was probably the funniest moment in the whole film. But he goes on a bit of a road trip, and he meets a kind of an ex-hippie couple, played by Kathy Bates, the Oscar winner for Misery. And I think that her husband is played by Howard Hessman. I'm remembering it. Howard Hessman was someone who had been a huge TV star, WKRP in Cincinnati. And then later he had a not as big of a hit, but a hit with Head of the Class. I think Robin Givens, Mike Tyson's ex, was on that show. And Devorah White, who plays Argyle in the original Die Hard, was an addition to the cast of that. But the scenes with Kathy Bates and Howard Hessman are so weird and eccentric and strange that they feel like plucked out of actual life. And so much of this movie, particularly the first act of this film, to me, is the best thing that Alexander Payne has ever done. When we see what Warren Schmidt's life is, when we realize this is not your brother's or your sister's or your father's Jack Nicholson. We've never seen Jack be this way. We're almost shocked. And the characters that Kathy Bates and Howard Hessman play, they help to loosen him up, to give him more of a free spirit, because this was a guy who was in insurance. Now, my dad was an accountant. Okay, he was a CPA. Nobody ever said he was a bean counter. It's about as big of a shot as you can take at somebody like Warren Schmidt, call him a bean counter, because he was in a little bit the actuarial aspect of it. But this guy has it in him to do more and be more than just a miserable sad sack coming to the end of the line. And there is a scene in the film which was talked about a lot at the time, and Steve Martin even made an unbelievable joke about it at the Oscars, where it seems that Kathy Bates' character and Howard Hessman's character, they're in a little bit of what would now be called polyamory. They are ethically non-monogamous. That's what it seems. That's what the movie appears to be suggesting. And there is a moment in the film where Kathy Bates and Jack are presumably naked in a hot tub. And, Steve Martin. I was going to say Billy Crystal. Steve Martin at the Oscars following year. The Oscars that, as I say, Adrian Brody won. He won Best Actor. That was the year that Chicago took Best Picture. But Steve Martin talks about, the Best Picture nominees or some of the best films of the year. and he says, and I loved About Schmidt, and that's the movie, for those who haven't seen it, where Jack Nicholson gets into a hot tub with Kathy Bates. But then again, who hasn't? And they cut to Kathy Bates with the most shocked expression. It almost seemed as if Steve ad-libbed that, because normally they prepare the people. Yeah, he's going to do this. He's going to do that. She looked like the most surprised person in the gallery, and Jack was cracking up. It was a great Oscars moment. But ultimately, what is Warren Schmidt's life going to be? This film deals with existential crises, spiritual crises, but it does it in such a way that feels real, because there are no easy answers. This is not Seconds, the John Frankenheimer film where a 60-ish banker can suddenly be made to look like Rock Hudson and we can add 20 years to your life expectancy. This is not that movie. This is a very melancholy, meticulous character study of a pretty good guy who just doesn't know where he's going and why. And Jack's performance, if it wasn't going to be Adrian Brody, I thought that Jack was going to win. I had already seen About Schmidt. I like Gangs of New York, but the sense was that as incredible as Daniel Day-Lewis is in that film, he wasn't going to win. He knew Michael Caine wasn't winning for The Quiet American. And I didn't think that Nicolas Cage had enough traction with adaptation, although that film is not that good. Falls apart in the third act. Spoiler alert, Cage's performance is marvelous. Nothing wrong with his performance. But I was pulling for Adrian first and Jack second. I was a little disappointed, but as I mentioned on the episode on Adrian Brody, the fact that both Jack and Nicolas Cage took part in the standing ovation and the way they seemed genuinely happy that if they weren't going to win the Best Actor Oscar, I'm glad this kid who was so brilliant in that movie, The Pianist, so brilliant, we're glad that he won. And that's how they came across. They didn't have to announce it. They didn't have to say it, but that's what it felt like. And to most of the people there who were cheering, if I didn't win, even Michael Caine was applauding. He'd already won 2 Oscars by that point. I'm glad that he ended up getting the top prize. Now, I don't know what platforms About Schmidt is on. I know it's been on Netflix, and I'm pretty sure that it was on HBO Max, or what used to be called HBO Max. I don't know. I think you might be able to find it on Prime for a couple of bucks, but it's okay to Google it because sometimes one of those sort of obscure streamers has it. So check it out. It is a great movie, but just understand it's a dramatic comedy, not a comedy. There are laughs, and there are going to be some big laughs, but this is a more serious film than audiences of the day thought they were getting. But if you want to see why Jack Nicholson was Jack Nicholson, this is as good a place to start as older era Jack playing completely against type and just knocking it out of the park. I don't know what kind of research he did, but he feels like this guy. He doesn't feel like Jack Nicholson. Yeah, we see that it's him, but much the way that Anthony Hopkins turned into Hannibal Lecter and he turned into James Stevens for Remains of the Day, Jack Nicholson sheds all of our preconceptions of him, for him, with him. And he creates this fully fleshed out, flawed, but so beautifully, sometimes painfully human character of Warren Schmidt. And props to Alexander Payne for getting this level of a great performance from one of the greatest actors who ever worked in cinema, Jack Nicholson. About Schmidt from 2002, starring Jack Nicholson, Jane Squibb, Hope Davis, Dermot Mulroney, Howard Hessman, and fellow Oscar winner Kathy Bates. The newest entry in our continuing series of the best movie you've never seen, and for sure, a historically, despite the Oscar nomination, a historically underrated performance from the great Jack Nicholson. This has been episode 493 of the Confessions of a Not So Dangerous Mind podcast. I'd like to thank you all so much for spending some of your Wednesday evening here with me in New York. If you check out this episode on the YouTube channel, haven't done so already, please click like, subscribe, comment, share, turn on those notifications. Or if you catch this episode on the audio platforms such as Podbean, Spotify, iTunes, or the others in which we're hosted, same general rule applies. Click like, subscribe, share, and turn on those notifications. I'll be back with a new episode real soon. Until then, peace.